Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel The Data Dose. So in today's video we will be solving one of the most important SQL interview question. So this problem I took it from datadriven.com, and also after solving the question we will look into when to use the where clause and when to use the having clause, because though the concept seems simple, but understanding of when to use where plays a very critical role in solving the SQL interview questions. So let's start by reading the problem statement and what the problem statement demands. So we need to find the consistent high quantity revenue. So we need to compute the total transaction revenue for each user and the product pair. From this statement only we got to know that we need to use the aggregation for each user and the product pair, that is group by. And then the main question is, but only for the pairs where every single transaction had a quantity of at least 2. So for the user for that product, at least that number of transactions or number of quantity he has purchased should be greater than 2. If any transaction for that pair falls below 2, we need to exclude the entire pair. So this is a very important statement in the problem statement, that even if there are pairs of user ID and the product ID greater than 2 for other products, but if any of the user ID or any of the product ID is less than 2, then we need to exclude whole entire group, and we need to show the user, product and the total revenue listed by the user ascending and revenue descending. So let's see how our input table looks. There is a transaction ID, there is a user ID, there is a product ID, and there is a quantity, and there is a total amount. We need to find the total transaction revenue. So the transaction revenue would be nothing but the sum of total amount for that particular user ID and the product ID. Now, initially to be honest, initially when I was solving this problem, I used the where clause, so that I thought that if we filter out the rows where the quantity is less than 2, so I would arrive at the desired output. But that was not the case, and where I started digging more about the where and having, and made it visualize in my mind that how the things work and how the data it get prepared in the database when we are using the where and having clause. So which made my concept more clearer by solving this problem. So let's write the query and then look into the more explanatory part of where to use the where and having clause. So we need to have the user ID, the product ID, and then we need to have the sum of total amount, that is revenue, sum of total amount as total amount from the table transactions, and I need to group by the user ID and the product ID. Now I need to write a filter statement having minimum of quantity for that particular group. If it is greater than 0, if it is greater than or equal to 2, then only we need to have the user ID, product, and then the total revenue. And then at last I need to order it by, as said by the user user ID ascending order, and then we need to order the total amount by descending. And if I run this query, so our solution is accepted. And if I submit it, it it has been accepted. So while solving the problem, what initially I did was, instead of having here, I wrote where where the quantity is greater than or equal to 0. So this gave me error, and then obviously the where is used, sorry, where I wrote it here before the group by, because this is the first condition in the execution plan. And then I try to solve the problem by this. Obviously this will not get the desired result. So now let's move on to explanation where we have the more clear picture of where and having. So I took the same scenario, why sometime where clause false and why we need to having the minimum instead. And suppose there is a problem that we need to compute the total revenue for each user product pair, and but only the pair for every transaction has quantity at least 2, and even if even one transaction for that pair is less than 2, we need to exclude that whole group, entire group. So in the now for example, even this is the user id, this is the product id, and this is the quantity. And for the user id 101 and the product id, if we see, there are two records which are satisfying the condition, but there is one record 1 which is not satisfying the condition. Now if we use the where condition at the initial, what it will do, this will this will omit this record, and by filtering out this condition, still we will be getting these two records which are having the quantity 3 and 4, which are greater than 2. But as per our question, this will not solve the question. So as per our question, even if one quantity is less than 2, we need to exclude whole entire group of 101 and p1. So this is possible only after the aggregation, not prior to the aggregation. So there is a simple a line that we need to have a more clarity, that is, when we want to do the filtering on each column of the each row of the after the aggregation, then we need to use the having clause. But we want to execute the filtering condition for each row of the input table, then we need to use the where clause. So for our, why I have used the minimum of minimum of the quantity is greater than or equal to 0 2. So this filtering, for example in this case, now what is the minimum of quantity for this user id and product id? That is 1. And while filtering, if it is greater than 2, then only we will be getting the sum, that is total revenue. So here, by this, it will be excluding whole the user id and the product id, and we will be getting the desired result. And if we see for the product user id 102 and the product id p2, both the quantity are satisfying the condition that is greater than 2. So this will be satisfying and satisfying the condition, and it will be going for calculating the total revenue. So this was the whole. So the point which I was much more interested in clearing is that where is used before aggregation, and the having is used after the aggregation on particular group, where we need to have the filtering condition on each row of the group, then only we need to use the having clause. So the next slides are just the repetition of which I said just now. That is, if we use the where query, how it would be, like I said, 314 before where, and after when we use the where, it would be 34. but still this is wrong. Like SQL removes the invalid before, so the correct query would be where we use the having the minimum of query greater than or equal to 0, and then minimum would be 2. In this group, one minimum would be 1, which will not satisfy the condition and it will fail, and group 2 will passing valid group. So understanding of the clarity between the where and having is very important. Visually also, if you are able to visualize the things for the SQL, and if we know how to use the where and having, so it will majorly solve 50% of the clarity of the SQL concept, and I believe. So thank you for watching my video. uh, Please like, share, subscribe. See you in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep hustling. Thank you.